Hey everybody, welcome to the Tuesday, January 24th SIG Release weekly meeting. My name is Jeremy and I'll be the host today. I'm going to put the agenda into the chat. Oh, it looks like Marco already did it. Thank you, Marco. And with that, we can go ahead and kick it off. We generally start this meeting off by allowing folks to introduce themselves if they're new. Before we do that, I'll just give a quick reminder that this meeting is covered by the CNCF Code of Conduct. So be mindful of the things you say on the meeting. And this will be recorded and be available on YouTube later today. So if you don't want to be on camera, feel free to turn your camera off. And with that, I'll open it up. If anybody would like to introduce themselves, if they're new to the meeting or if they're coming back after a long break, go ahead and introduce yourselves. Just pause there for a minute.
I'm new. I don't think I've been here before. I'm Micah. I work at AWS on EKS, and I'm also on the SRC, so the Security Response Committee.
Hey, welcome. Oh, and would anybody be willing to take notes today? I can do it if not. Okay, I'll take notes while we go. All right. If anybody else wants to say hello, this is your last shot. Otherwise, you can say hi in the chat or something and go from there. All right, we'll jump over to sub-project updates. And first up, we have Mohammed, freezing Kate's GCR IO image registry count. Go for it, Mohammed.
Hi there. So this is something that we talked about 2 weeks ago. It's in a cap now, so I need the SIG release leads to approve it and we can get going with it. It would be nice if we did this as soon as possible because that gives us 2 months for the message to set and everybody get an idea that that's what we're doing, and that's it. So I need some SIG release approvers to approve the cap, and then there's some technical work for me to do about March time, but I'm going to make a start in now, and that's it.
Cool. I took a preliminary pass through that and it looked, I had a couple of small questions, but I think you addressed them. Does anybody have any questions about this? Have you had a chance to look at it or not? Otherwise, we can take some actions to go ahead and give it some reviews. And I agree, getting it done ASAP is a really good thing to allow some comms time. This is a fairly major change for folks to accommodate. All right, well, I'll give it another review today.
Okay.
Come back to that.
Yeah, so once you approve it, I'm gonna go and write up the email in a doc, and then we can take a look at that probably next week and send it out.
Cool, that sounds good.
All right, thanks.
All right, moving on. Marco, January patch releases.
Yeah, I have some notes there about the January patch releases. Last week we had 126.1, 125.6, 124.10, and 123.16. Those patch releases are now available. Everything went mostly fine. We had a hiccup in the promotion process, and that required us to delay 124.10 for 1 day, mostly because it got late in the day and we didn't want to have everyone stay up late waiting for promotion process release and so on. So we decided to be on the safe side to move it for 1 day and then to continue from day. Next day, everything went fine, and we have the releases. However, one bad thing that we have is that we are often hitting signing flakes. I left an issue in the meeting minutes about this. It sometimes happens that when trying to sign something, we get an error that the file doesn't exist, the signature file doesn't exist, and that breaks the whole release process. So it is nothing too bad. We can just retry and it eventually works, but it is very annoying. Sometimes, like for 124, we had to retry 3 or 4 times, and like this is a waste of time, and I think that we should try to get it fixed as soon as possible. That said, I increased the priority of this ticket to critical because it would be nice to get it fixed in time for February releases, if that's okay for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's pretty important to get that one straightened out. Because it also failed, like when it fails in the staging jobs, that's one thing. And retrying them is okay. But the when it failed on the release job, that seemed like a little more important to fix up.
Yeah, and that would be it for January patch releases. Is there any question about releases before I go to the next topic? Okay, I will take that as a no. So Open Build Service or OBS proof of concept is in progress again. I finally come up with a cap. So I added it as an agenda point later on to quickly introduce it and to ask some questions that I have. So I will leave that for the open discussion. Also, I would like to highlight that release branches are updated to Go 1.19.5 and master is getting updated to Go 120 RC3. There is a work in progress PR for that. Tests are mostly green, and I wanted to give thanks to Carlos, Jordan, and Mata for driving this forward. Thank you so much. And I think that would be it when it comes to my updates for today. Or looks like we have a question from Jordan.
I was just going to note that the tests are actually totally green. There's one test job that's failing, but it's like a job that doesn't normally run and doesn't actually have an image that can run. But all the EDE is passing on the new Go version, and all the canaries are passing on the new Go version, which is awesome.
Yeah, thank you for the update and thank you for this driving this forward. It's great progress.
That's super cool. All right, any questions about the Go update or OBS before we move on? Okay, next up, CC, planned Alpha 1 cut today.
Yeah, just as we scheduled earlier, today will be the Alpha 2 cut for 1.27 release, and I plan to do it today after dropping off case. So we do had a blocker issue yesterday popping up, and thanks for Hita and others, we get it solved. So I guess currently we don't have any blocking for the Alpha cut. Yeah, if people do have concerns, please feel free to let me know. Yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you. If you have any questions or any run into issues during that, feel free to reach out and we'll jump in to help you out. All right, release team, any updates for the release team, Xander?
We don't have anything specific. Right now, we're looking at 47 enhancements opted in. Things have been pretty smooth sailing so far, so hopefully we stay that way. Yeah, I'm excited for the alpha cut.
All right, let's move on over to open discussion. We have a few items there. I think we'll spend some time on those. Marco, do you want to take the first one?
Yeah, sorry again for a little bit of my items, but yeah. So the first one is updating the cap 7031 for building packages. I finally created that cap, and I'm also sorry that it took so long, but we had holidays and I had many other things to take care of, but it is finally there. I wanted to quickly highlight what I did there so that when you're reviewing it, you have some ideas. So I described why we wanted to go with OBS. I described how is this going to look like, what architectures we are going to go with, what packages and stuff like that. I try to keep it as much as we have to the setup that we have right now. So same architectures, same packages. What is different is on what operating systems we are building. Now, for example, we are building packages for Ubuntu on Ubuntu 20.04 for CentOS or CentOS Stream 8. And we are also building for some architectures on OpenSUSE operating system. So this is something to pay attention to. So far, it turns out to work pretty good. A little problem is that while for architectures like PowerPC or S309X, packages are building, but we don't really have a way to test them. This is something that I'm not super happy about, but yeah, I don't think that we have much we can do much about it until finding someone who eventually uses those architectures, if there's anyone using them. Also, I did some task to, let's say, come close to wrapping up the proof of concept. I finally got all packages building. I migrated to Dev build, so we don't have Debian specs anymore. Those are not a thing. We only have RPM specs. Those specs are being converted to Debian specs by a tool called Dev build, and then we are using the appropriate tooling to build packages. That is working fantastic well. I'm very happy about it. And also we did some changes to the structure of our project in OBS, like coming up with building or staging project, and coming up with a publishing project where we are going to publish packages, solving the problem that old packages are being deleted. So we now keep all packages and all versions. So some pretty important progress has been made on that. What I would like to bring up to the, let's say, highlight also, is that I'm probably going to remove everything from our OBS project this week. I mentioned that in the Slack channel, but I wanted to start fresh so that I can better test it. And also, I'm going to need support from leads, first of all, to review the cap. The second thing is that we will need to set up account and to bring it up in the GCP so that we can use with Krell and stuff like that later. This is not that urgent before actually implementing it, but I hope that I will be soon able to like integrate it with Krell. And also one thing is that we need to decide on domain that we are going to use, because like, is it going to be like OBS Kubernetes IO? Is it going to be packages.kubernetes IO or something like that? We can't keep apt Kubernetes IO and yum Kubernetes IO because the URL structure is a little bit different. Or maybe we do, I don't know. But maybe we can just go with packages.kubernetes IO or something like that. Something to pay attention and see what URL we want to use. And that will be it regarding OBS. So do we have any question?
At least for the naming, we can, I think we can bike shed on the naming, but I would say that for the existing names, we just make a clean break. We've got, what was it? We've got APT and the yum, right? Are the ones that are currently being used. I would say we just make a clean break. That way it's easier to announce when you actually do turn the thing on.
Yeah, I'm going to double check because as speaking just right now, I got an idea how we can keep APT and yum. So I'm going to check with folks if that is doable from SIG Infra, KTS Infra, and we'll report back on that.
It's definitely not a strong requirement. I don't think we should keep it personally.
Okay, yeah, then so going with something like packages Kubernetes IO is okay, and I will mention that in the cabinet. This is a potentially breaking change.
And there's a question from Jordan in the chat. You want to read it out for us, Jordan?
Yeah. I just want to make sure that the test issue you mentioned with like PowerPC or 390X, like that's not new to this, right? Like we already have test issues with those platforms, right?
To my knowledge, yes. I'm not sure that we have any way to test those packages, but maybe someone can correct me if I am wrong.
Yeah, that's. Sorry, continue, Jordan.
I was just going to say, like, it's good to call out, like, hey, we don't have a way to test this, but don't get bogged down like trying to solve existing problems that are unrelated, if possible.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a supported platforms kept somewhere that existed kind of across release and SIG architecture, or at least discussion of it. And really, I mean, I think that support predated maybe everyone that's on this call outside of Jordan, for PowerPC as well as S390X. We have never solved it, and really solving it comes down to having infrastructure somewhere where we would be able to test those architectures. That is still not true today. So yeah, don't over rotate on trying to solve that problem.
Yeah, I think I once brought it up that we have actually considered deprecating it and like getting rid of those packages. But I think the consensus is that we don't want to do it yet. So that would be a little bit bigger change. So we keep them, we build them, and hope for the best. I guess this is the solution that we can do for now.
Yeah, we build, we mention or continue to mention that they are really best effort, for providing them as best effort. I think it also, if you look at our builds, Go runner images, for example, where they flake out are pretty much always on S390X builds. So like something to keep in mind, like if there is an opportunity further down the line, it doesn't need to be tied into this project delivery, but further down the line, we should reassess what we're producing.
Yeah. Okay, are there any other questions for OBS?
It's not a question, it's more of a comment. Great work. Thank you for working on this. Thank you for all the updates that you provided. Thank you to the entire team who's been kind of cranking away on the OBS stuff. I know that not all of us have been able to direct attention at it, but the work is appreciated and recognized.
Thank you. And I would also like to thanks a lot to the OBS team for providing a lot of help and helping us to solve all the issues that we encountered. It's really appreciated. Okay. And finally, yeah, please review the cap when you have some time. I will go to the next topic if that's okay, because
Go for it.
Yeah, I created 2 PRs. The first one was discussed on Slack, and this is to include the minor.0 releases in the patch releases calendar, because I believe that information is not discoverable and accessible enough. Like you can find it in schedule YAML file, you can find it in the SIG release repo, but if you look at the patch releases page, you can't easily find it, neither at the release information page. So I propose 2 approaches, and I would like if you, when you have some time, to please take a look and to let me know what approach you like better, and if you at all like this approach, and in that case, I will make this PR ready and then we can merge it, if that's okay, of course. And the second PR is something about cherry picks. I actually wanted to discuss it on 2 meetings, but we once didn't have time. Second time we canceled. It is about leaving a note in the cherry pick unapproved message that if you did a cherry pick, the change to all supported release branches to leave a comment about that. So this is something that while reviewing cherry picks, I encountered pretty often. And it is often slowing down the process, making PRs miss the cherry pick deadline. And I think it's nice to highlight that if you didn't do so, like if you did a cherry pick to all supported branches, that you should leave a comment describing why you didn't do so. And those are the 2 PRs that I created and that I am looking for feedback. So please take a look. If that looks okay to you, we can merge them. If not, yeah, that would be it. And if there are no any questions about those PRs, back to Jeremy.
All right. Thank you, Marco. If anybody has any questions for that before we move on, we'll give you a chance to voice them now. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Jordan. All right, Jordan, take it away.
Cool. Yeah, so I had sent email to the mailing list last week, I guess. As we talked about last time, or as was talked about last time, sorry, I missed the meeting. There was an update to Go 119 on the 123 and 124 release branches. And that's not something we've traditionally done. We've traditionally kept release branches on the Go minor version they started with. And that was largely due to not being able to consistently update Go minor versions. And I've talked through a ton of the history and lots of examples of things Go did on minor versions that kept us from updating release branches to those new minor versions. But talking with the Go team over the past 2 years and sort of raising the issues that we were having, trying to keep our release branches on supported Go versions, prompted the Go team to take a hard look at what they were doing in minor versions and adjust what they're doing.
Hey,
and
Jordan.
So, yeah.
Can I just interject for a bit?
Yeah.
So one thing to note for people who are on the call is that Go doesn't quite follow Semver. And so Go minor versions are things that if we were looking at it from the lens of Semver versioning, right? Go minor versions are actually those are Go major versions.
Sort of like Kubernetes. If we're honest.
Exactly, right. So looking at it with that lens, that kind of frames why we don't do it across release branches, because it's a major version bump every time we're doing it. Sorry, Jordan, continue.
Sure. So I think I could only find one example in the past where we'd updated a release branch to a new Go minor version. It happened in, I think, 1.16, Kubernetes 1.16. We did it. And there have been, like, intermittently, Go would release a new minor version, and I'm sorry, the chat was for the agenda. Go would release a new minor version. There'd be nothing problematic in it, and we could update, but because we couldn't do it consistently, it was just more confusing to, like, sometimes update Go minor versions and sometimes not. Anyway, as we've sort of solidified how long we support Kubernetes minor versions, so the annual support cap landed a couple of years ago. The mismatch between how long Kubernetes supports patch releases on a given minor stream and how long the Go version we were using was supported has sort of come up over and over again. And the result of that mismatch is that patch releases for Kubernetes, older supported Kubernetes versions, have been built on Go versions that are out of support, and in some cases have, you know, denial of service CVEs or CVEs that get flagged by scanners. And so we're in the not great position of having Kubernetes versions that we're actively cutting and releasing, like, showing up flagged as, oh, this image has vulnerabilities, you shouldn't use this. Anyway, I opened a KEP kind of laying out the history and some of the changes Go has made and some of the reasons Kubernetes couldn't update in the past, and with a proposal for ways that we could cautiously update release branches to new Go versions once a set of conditions were met. I don't know if we want to open it now. If there's more topics, we can sort of leave it at that and ask for a review on the KEP, or if we want to dive in or get other people's thoughts.
Yeah, the agenda is pretty. Oh, go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, I was saying probably what you were about to say, Jeremy. The agenda is looking pretty light after this. I think it would be worthwhile. I mean, this is an important enough topic too. I think it'd be worthwhile to take some time on the call to look over it.
Okay.
Do you want to bring it up? I can give you presenter permission if you want to walk through it, or I can bring it up and we can
see prior comments about not using Zoom recently.
All right, yeah.
If you have screen share, how about if you try? It might be easier.
Okay, sounds good. Let me do that. Okay, cool. Bring up the README. Take a look at file.
Yes.
All right, let me know where you want to go. And I'll...
let's start with the motivation and goals. That's a nice place to start. So this kind of talks through what I was mentioning, where there's a mismatch between how long a Go version supported and how long the Kubernetes version built on it is supported. I looked at the history of Go patch releases and satisfied my OCD nature, but exactly 50% of them mentioned security content. So obviously that will change in the future, but it's not rare for a Go version, a Go patch release to say, oh, we found a security issue and fixed it. Now, obviously, not all of those affect Kubernetes, but some of them do. Like we actually use a lot of the standard library. And so stuff under HTTP server, stuff under encryption, stuff under like parsing, JSON, like we actually use a lot of the surface area. So I would estimate maybe half of the Go security issues. You could make a plausible case that someone using Kubernetes would be impacted in some way. And so then I talk about, like, obviously the what we would like to do is just like, oh, update Go, problem solved. But there are pretty regular examples of why we couldn't do that, or why it was riskier or more disruptive or a bigger change than we wanted to consume on a release branch. So then I pointed to the changes that Go has proposed and is making. And so those are actually going to land in Go 121, which is awesome. I'm super happy to see that. So that's sort of the background. Like we want to stay up to date, but it was hard and we couldn't consistently in the past. And so now that there's a chance that the problems that we encountered in the past might not be problems, I wanted to sort of lay out like what would our requirements be for updating release branches to avoid disruption, avoid risk while staying secure. I think folks had already taken a quick look. There were some questions about if this was wanting to change our approach for updating Go versions for the development branch. And I wouldn't change anything we're doing there. I think where we're at there is a pretty healthy place where we adopt early and give feedback and identify issues early. So I've been pretty happy with what we've been doing for the last few years on the development branch. So this is really just talking about like what would our requirements be for taking those updates back to older release branches. The main two things I think we want to avoid are regressions and requiring user action on patch upgrades. And so pretty much the rest of this is just talking about how can we build confidence that we're not regressing, and how can we ensure that when we update a Go version on a release branch, we're not pushing required actions to users, either in behavior changes or in requiring them to update their Go version when they build our libraries. Yeah, so before we jump into sort of the nitty-gritty of the proposed steps or whatever, is there feedback on sort of that motivation or goals or thoughts about those? And this isn't a speak now, forever hold your silence kind of thing. Like, by all means, comment on the pull request afterwards. Okay, hearing none, I will move on. So if you want to jump to the proposal, there's basically 3 steps to what I'm proposing. The first is that we do a better job of tracking what we had to do in Kubernetes as part of updating to a new Go version. In the past, we've kind of only been working on the development branch. And so we've sort of sometimes just smushed together like, oh, we need to update this dependency, we need to fix this like lint check, and we also need to update this tool, and we also need to like tweak how we're calling the standard library here. And then we'll also bump the Go version. And so we'll merge this sort of mega PR that's like a stack of, I don't know, a bunch of commits. It's like, oh, we are now on the next version of Go. And it makes it hard to tell if any of those changes only work with the next version of Go, instead of, like ideally, we wouldn't make any changes that would break the previous version of Go. And so the proposal is to track what we're changing as we're updating the development branch to a new Go version, and try to do that independently and as a prereq merge. And that gives us confidence that we actually pass all our tests and pass our pre-submits both on the current version and the next version of Go. And I linked to an example of how we were doing this as we're actually making the Go 120 update currently, if you want to open that real quick. So we haven't actually updated the master branch to Go 120 yet, but we've merged 4 updates to turn tests green on Go 120. And because they merged and passed and post submits are still green, we also know they still work on Go 119. So this is sort of, I mean, the mechanism could be an issue or a project board, or like the mechanism isn't as important, but this is sort of what I'm envisioning, where we say, like, here are the exact changes we had to make so that Kubernetes would build and pass tests with Go 120. And we know none of them require Go 120. They also work with Go 119. So that's the first step, just tracking that and trying to do it independent of the Go bump. The second step is to take those changes back to our supported release branches. Ideally, not preemptively, what's the word? I've lost my vocabulary. Proactively. And obviously this should stay within the guidelines for what we accept in release branches in terms of risk and size and disruption. Like, none of these should be disruptive. None of these should be risky. If they are risky or disruptive, we should look at reworking them to be less risky and less disruptive. And I kind of stepped through the typical changes we see. So tooling and test changes, we're not actually affecting what we ship. Dependency updates, usually they're small. Sometimes we'll see one that come in that's big. And so what we've done in the past is go to that dependency author and say, like, hey, can you cut a patch release of like your older version with just this minimal change, so we can bump to that on our release branches. Vet and lint fixes usually are real fixes that we would want to backport. And then, yeah, there are examples of working with both Go 1 and the previous version of Go, where usually it's like a one-line tweak, and it's pretty easy to reason about the risk of that. So those 2 steps, like tracking what we do to update to Go and then making those updates in previous version, those don't seem that big of a deal to me. I think the meat of this proposal is in the requirements around the 3rd step. And so, like, how do we know when we're comfortable taking a new Go version back to release branches? And so these requirements were sort of what I came up with, but I would love to hear other people's perspective on this. So I can walk through them real quick and then let people weigh in. So I think we should wait until the new Go version has been around at least a few months. Like, Go versions don't get instant adoption, and so giving time for it to sort of percolate through the community and get reports of regressions and those get investigated, I think we should probably wait at least a few months. Timing wise, if we start looking at making the update a few months in, that sort of splits the difference between staying on the latest version, but also giving time for feedback. So this was sort of a shot in the dark, but it seemed maybe reasonable. The second one was, I don't think we should update older release branches to a new Go version until we have an actual Kubernetes release on that Go version that's out. Until we've released release candidates and maybe even in a .0, .1 release, it's hard to be confident that there's not some edge case in Kubernetes use that would be impacted. And so if we adopt the new Go version and master, release the next Kubernetes release on it, and then give time for feedback on that as a precondition to taking that back further. That seems reasonable to me. I picked a month because at least some major providers are get new minor versions to production in a month. And again, kind of just a random choice, but combined with waiting for at least 3 months on the new Go version, I think that if we wait for both of those to be true, that seems good. And then the rest of these are around like making sure that we're not requiring users to take action, we're not requiring users to bump Go versions, and we're not releasing anything that we know has behavioral changes. So we can mitigate any behavioral changes. And so the mechanism we use to mitigate those changes could vary. The one we just did with the Go 119 updates in 123 and 124. We used like some environment variable twiddling internally with what Go is doing. That should be a lot easier going forward, but the exact mechanism I'm not as concerned about as just the guarantee that we're not exposing required actions or behavior changes to end users. Anyway, thoughts on that? Are there things that we're missing from here? Does anyone look at these and think, oh, that's way too long, or that's way too short, or yeah, I'd be curious to hear feedback.
I have 2 points. Or Stephen, go first. Yeah.
So I think generally the idea that new Kubernetes version and -1 are sane for some period of time makes sense. I do think that like if we can get a bit more precise on the I say precise and then I'm about to say edge cases, but the interesting things that pop up in like the 117 to 118, right? I think what we had done in the past was basically like you or I or DIMS or something would open this PR and then just play whack-a-mole until everything was happy. And then like that would essentially be the tracking PR issue. And I think that we've gotten better in terms of like documenting what it looks like to do a pre-release, at least within the scope of the issue template for K-release. But I think the actions to be taken by a developer, maybe across the lint fixes, across some of these environment variables that need tweaking. I think like the X509 one was fun because certificates had to be regenerated, tests needed to be updated, etc. So yeah, I overall agree with the tracking of behavior changes. I think if we can get a bit more concrete on them based on what we've seen in the past, how they might be happening, as well as having that contract that N and N -1 need to be good before we go further back, I think makes sense. Marco.
Yeah, I would first like to comment on the first 2 points because I think that we can merge them. No, sorry, not about that one, about 3 and 1 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We can probably merge point 1 and point 2 in 1 point. Like if we have a Kubernetes released version that is like for 3 months, I think that it should be safe to go. The reason why I'm a little bit worried about these 1 month policies, because from my experience, from personal one, adopting releases, especially new minors, takes much more than 1 month, both for providers, for on-prem, from other users. So it wouldn't get as much as a signal. For example, we released 126 mid-December or something like that. I doubt that anyone started using it until recently or something like that. That's the first thing. The second thing is relevant to 0.5 in some way is one of the criteria I would think about is should we allow merging to updating to newer Go if that's going to break backwards compatibility in way that for libraries and other Kubernetes dependencies, you have to use the new Go version. For example, something that I brought up when the last time when we updated the release branches is like, can you use client Go and other dependencies with Go 1.18 now that we updated to 1.19? I think this is one that is pretty important because we don't really want to break that compatibility because we can't know the users of those libraries able to easily update to newer Go versions. So something that I would pay attention to. I think that can be pretty important as well.
Yeah, big +1 to not breaking use of the libraries on the previous Go version. And so I think someone else had asked about that, and I tried to call it out there. So this proposes creating unit and integration test jobs that use the original Go version for that release branch, so that we don't merge things to the branch that keep that version of Go from being able to run all the library unit and integration tests. I left off E to E because it was hard and because I think we're expecting people to run the binaries we release. And so I would probably lean on unit and integration tests. Integration tests actually spin up servers in process and like exercise them a lot. So integration tests cover a ton of use. I would probably lean on unit and integration tests passing on the previous Go version as an indicator that the libraries are usable on that version, but be curious about feedback.
Yeah, related to that, sorry, Marco, go for it.
Yeah, I want to quickly say that it is okay. If someone is building the Kubernetes binaries on their own, I guess they can fiddle around Go versions, set updates and fix that. But someone who is using library might not have that capacity. And I think this is the most important when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think if you're going to be using them on your own, I'm going to presume if I choose to choose my own adventure, I'm going to also make sure that I have scaffolded a set of tests that are going to make sure that however that build process is being executed is going to produce something that I can actually run in whatever environment I'm running it in. So I'm not too concerned about that case. I think we'll need to get tighter on it's going to be worth a look around the tooling that we do for creating release branches and creating the tests for release branches, because we are having this kind of like post-op situation where the first time we cut the release, branch, we get all the tests, right? We get all the tests that are assumed for the Go versions that's currently out for that branch. The second go around means that we're going to be doing test regeneration or rotation, whatever you want to call it, for an additional suite of tests that are going to be tested. So one, we've got tests for the old Go version, which are fine because we created them at the time that the branch and the release was going out. The second suite of tests is going to be tests for Go version N+1, right? And at the time of release cut +1. So there's going to be some tooling work involved as well, at least on the test infra rel side.
Yeah, I also linked to a issue. I can't remember where it was. It was somewhere in this doc, maybe down in the test plan. Oh yeah. The test infra issue linked there. For a while, we wanted to make it easier to switch the Go version that tests run with. And so we started sort of looking at doing it in a way similar to how Kind does it and other Kubernetes projects do it, where there's a Go version file in the repo that says, I want to build and run tests with this version. And so it's possible as that gets looked at and improved, might be easier to sort of make the automatic test jobs just use the version specified in the repo. And if we need to create additional test jobs at the point where we bump Go versions to say force tests using the original Go version, we could. But I agree, we'd want to make sure it was coherent with our tooling and documented process. I did want to mention one thing about what Marco said. I agree that adoption of the new Kubernetes version takes longer, but I think we actually do see a lot of good reports and qualification of new versions during that 1 month post-release period. Even if it's not getting adopted by end users, during that month after release, a lot of people are picking it up and running it through their own qualification passes. So like I can speak for GKE, like we've been getting new versions to production within a month, which means that they're already passing all of our pre-prod qualifications. So scale issues and test issues and integration issues turning up in our own internal tests, we would be reporting that and catching issues there. So it's not perfect. And I agree, it's not going to be widely adopted after a month, but I think it does get us something. So.
Yeah, I think we get more than we had in the past, and that's generally why we also choose to cut that 0.1 release a little faster than we do the rest of the patch releases, because we just know the critical bug fix, the regression like report is going to come in under that month time limit. So I think the way we're getting the feedback today is okay, just as long as we continue to message whatever contract that we have with the community about when things are happening, how they're happening, how you can provide feedback, etc.
All right. We are at time now. That was a really good overview, Jordan. Thank you for doing that. So it's on the recording and other folks can kind of come back and watch it later. That'll be really useful to share out. If anybody has any more questions on that topic or any other topic, feel free to dive into the KEPs that were referenced, give your reviews there, provide feedback. And I think that'll be a great improvement for us going forward. All right, with that, I will call it a meeting. If you have any other questions, feel free to bring them up on SIG Release or on the mailing list, and we can take things from there. Have a great rest of your Tuesday or Wednesday if it's almost time. Have a great day.
Thanks everyone for the work. Bye.